Is chaos magic for everyone? It really depends on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go. So let's have a better look at what that really means. But first, the intro. So how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? The reason I say that is because when it comes to chaos magic, there are certain elements such as sigil magic, servitors and things like that, which can be extracted from chaos magic itself. They were formed as part of chaos magic, but anybody can use them. And you can use them in whatever path, tradition, or religion you actually follow, and you can integrate them quite well into any path. You can call on your own deities, for example, although chaos magicians don't work with specific deities. Obviously, they can if they want to, and it depends on their own basis. But those magical operations can be used by everybody. But if you want to really delve deeply into chaos magic, then you obviously need to understand chaos and how a chaos magician actually works with chaos. But there are a lot of different interpretations about what chaos magic actually is, or how to define chaos magic itself. I've mentioned this in a previous video, but it's definitely worth mentioning again. Some years back I was given a good explanation by a chaos magician of how he interpreted chaos magic, and the analogy was that you have to imagine a very large table, and this table is just full of different kinds of foods. It's got platters of meat, it's got platters of dessert, it's got salad platters, it's got basically food that for everybody, all types of different foods. The meats one platter may be pork, one platter may be lamb, one platter may be beef, and then you get into your vegetables and your salads and your desserts and everything else. And whereas a Wiccan, for instance, may only take from one plate, or a ceremonial magician may take from a different plate, or a Kabbalist may take from a certain plate. So each religion, tradition and path takes from its own specific plate. The chaos magician takes from all of them. And this is very true with chaos magic. You do suspend belief. But during a period where you're actually doing a working or an operation or some kind of magical ritual, then you would take from the plate that allows you to actually accomplish the goal that you're heading towards. And during that time, you take on the belief of that specific tradition, path, religion, etc. But chaos itself, chaos is everything and nothing. It's God, it's Tao. It's the creative void, the quantum gap. Chaos itself, if you go back into the Greek, chaos or chaos was actually the original being, the original force, the original... I don't really want to call it a being or a deity or anything like that, although people refer to it as a god, because I think it just makes it easier to actually speak about, create conversation around things like that. But chaos was a force, and from chaos came Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros. Chaos itself actually translates to gap, or the emptiness, or the vast void, abyss, things like that. And in the original Greek cosmogony, chaos was that gap between heaven and earth. Hesiod actually said that chaos was the first thing to exist, and he actually said the chaos is the gaping void above the earth, created when earth and sky are separated from their primordial unity. So it's that tension between things that actually create this gap, this void, and you can sort of liken it to the Big Bang or the quantum gap, actually. Ginungan Gap, things like that. So the creation of all things. And then, as I say, from chaos came Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros, and it's believed, especially in the 5th century Orphic tradition, with the cosmic egg, Eros actually hatched from chaos and set the universe in motion. So this whole concept of chaos being the first, the primordial entity, a lot of people like to call it the primordial soup. So if you imagine chaos itself as being this primordial soup where everything's swimming around, but the universe itself and chaos being the universe is this whole concept of the universe being in constant flux and motion. And now on a surface level, a lot of people believe that chaos is complete disarray and complete disorder. And this actually came out of Elizabethan era. It was actually used in this way originally as a satirical exaggeration, but a lot of people have come to understand chaos as being this complete disarray. The elephants trampled through the event and it became complete chaos, something like that. But chaos itself is not disarray, it's not disorder, it's also not order. So the opposite of order is not chaos, the opposite of order is disorder, and chaos is both in equilibrium. So if you imagine this big ball of goo, this big ball of, I actually prefer to view it as energy, this sparking energy that's just flowing around itself, and it's if you actually look at it on the surface level, you think it's chaotic, it's complete disorder. But within this disorder is the formation of order. So from the formation of order come out these threads. If you look into a lot of traditions, you find descriptions of energy filaments or energy threads. If you look into Anglo-Saxon weird, for instance, it's often viewed as these threads of energy that project out of ourselves and form around everything. You can even go into the Norns and the Fates, the three sisters, who actually weave the destiny of a person, and it becomes a thread. In traditional witchcraft, we speak of the silver thread and the red thread and the white thread. So you've got all this symbolism of threads, which are energy threads or energy filaments that move through the universe and guide our path, form things from nothing into something. In Kabbalah we have Avir and Ruhaniyat, which is universal energy which becomes formed energy and forms a body. So all of this flow of energy, I like to sometimes imagine it as a bit of a spider web. So as you pluck on one thread, you can create a ripple effect through that thread to wherever it's going, things like that. But it is it's this ball of chaos. It's the whole universe really, so you can't really put it into a ball. But it's this ball of chaos that's just generating more and more and more energy, and then from within the disorder within there forms that order, and the order starts to flow out and around and in and everything else. But the main reason why I asked the question, is chaos magic for everyone? There's a certain state of mind that you need to train yourself toward, and this is actually the perfect example of mindfulness practice again. Because imagine yourself in a situation where something goes completely wrong. You're going through your day, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes this news that completely throws you off track and is just completely out of nowhere. And it causes this state of chaos in you, and you can either react to it from an emotional point of view where it's just too much to handle and you just withdraw, or you can react from a completely mental state, and I don't mean mental as in going crazy, a psychological state, a mental state, where you try and look at it from a rational point of view, from a logical point of view, and you just can't make any sense of it, and so you reject it. But at the same time, you're still got to go through it. So you put on the blinders, and you go through, and it's just you can't make sense of it, and you don't know what's going on, and you get to the end eventually, but it might not be the outcome that you would prefer. So with Chaos Magick, and this actually extends into all magic really, but I think the Chaotes have kind of gone down that rabbit hole a bit more than a lot of other traditions and paths, to try and understand the mind and the psychology behind everything, and to actually take that and use it in order to manipulate the outcome that you want. So when a Chaote comes across something which is totally out of the blue and causes chaos in our lives, they don't react immediately. A Chaote will actually look for the patterns. So Chaos Magick is actually about looking for the patterns within nature. And once you can find those patterns, you can ride those patterns and you can start steering them in the direction that you want. So it's a bit like paddling down a river. The current of the river will take you in a particular direction down the river. And you can't all of a sudden stop the boat and just head towards the shore. But what you can do is slowly steer it in a slightly different direction. It's still going to follow the main current, but you can steer it into directions that you want to actually go in. So you decide what you want to actually do while you're going down the river and you're flowing with the main current of the river. And you can even steer it gently to the side, but you just can't stop and go at a 90-degree angle, to the bank. I hope this is making some kind of sense. It makes sense in my head, it's just difficult to explain it sometimes. So Chaos Magick is about, as I say, recognizing the patterns within nature and actually working with those patterns and directing them in a manner in which you, or a direction and an outcome which you would prefer. So it is manipulation of that energy with your will. And I mean, another aspect of Chaos Magick itself is actually taking rituals from traditional paths and changing them. And by changing them, we would simplify them and make them fit more into the psychology of things. Because Chaos Magick is very much psychological magic. It's about working with the mind, the psychology of a person, the psychology of things in general. But in order to change that ritual into something simpler that still works, you need to first understand the ins and outs of that ritual. So this is why a Chaos Magician may take a year or 2 years or 3 years to actually delve deeply into a particular tradition and actually become that tradition. So if the ritual is ceremonial, or let's say thelema, let's speak particularly about a thelema ritual, for instance, then the Chaos Magician will actually become a thelemite and completely engross themselves in that tradition and in that path and in that religion in order to understand what it is and how it operates, really take all of it to pieces. And then once it's been taken to pieces and it's been experienced to its full extent, then belief is suspended so that you can look at it from a completely open perspective. And then it's put back together in a particular way. Kind of like a shamanic death, actually, now that I think about it. I mean, with a shamanic death, a symbolic shamanic death, you get taken by the trickster god, the Chaote, whatever the trickster is in your tradition, and you are basically ripped to pieces and then put back together again in a better way. And you are filled with power. So it's a bit like that, actually. So you take a ritual, you completely understand it, then you suspend belief so you can view it from a completely broad and clear basis, and then you take it to pieces and you put it back together again in a different manner. But because you understand how it works, you can then put it together in a manner in which it still works, and it works better for you and for other people maybe. But Chaos Magick is very much an individual path. Every Chaote will follow their own path, develop their own path. But as I say, the reason why I say or ask the question, is it for everybody, is mostly because of that whole thing where you're going to actually create chaotic situations in your life. Chaos is going to come along. It's going to come along regardless, but when you're working with Chaos Magick, you often find that that chaos does come along every now and again, and you have to be able to navigate your way through it. Find those patterns that are emerging from it. Find the order that is emerging from the disorder, and follow that constant flux and motion of the universe and of nature, and your own nature as well. So you need to be able to navigate your way through that. So you can't have a chaotic situation come into your life and you suddenly just shut down, or you react negatively. You need to become mindful of the situation, and you need to properly navigate your way through it. And not a lot of people can do this. Anybody can train themselves to do it. And this is why I say mindfulness practice comes in extremely handy for this. Because once you understand mindfulness practice and you can become mindful, you observe things from the observer. You will see things from the observer, from perspective of the observer. So instead of just reacting or shutting down, you would actually stop, find those threads that are moving in a particular direction and moving with order and with purpose, and then you would follow them and you would manipulate them into the outcome that you want. And as I say, it's not easy for everybody, but everybody can train themselves. So it really depends on how far down that rabbit hole you want to go. Okay, now if you've watched this far into the video, I assume that you have a solid interest in Chaos Magick, and it's not just a passing interest, that passing curiosity. So what I'd like to do is actually create a private group, and I've been wanting to do this for a while. So if you are interested in Chaos Magick, it doesn't matter if you're a complete beginner or if you've been a Chaote for some time, we can all learn from each other. So I want to create a private group. So if you are interested in that, then I'm going to leave the link to my Facebook, my personal Facebook profile. I'll use the handle Red Oak. Just send me a message and friend me, and I'll just want to gauge the interest first, and then if there's enough interest at this point, then I'll create a group, and then it'll be a completely private group, invitation only. So I'll have your contact on Facebook, and I can then send you an invite to the group. But contact me on Facebook and we'll discuss it further. And that's it for this week. I hope you have a brilliant weekend. Next week I'm going to start with servitors, which was requested. And I'll do a series on servitors. There's been a few videos that I've already done, quite extensive, but there are some topics that still need to be covered. And I'm going to start with a discussion that somebody brought up on the comments a while back about using your personal energy and whether you can create one servitor or multiple servitors at a time. There's a lot of different schools of thoughts in this area, so just want to have a bit of a discussion about that, maybe pull up some comments as we go through it. And so I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Cheers.